Welcome, and in today's video, I'll be covering the life of Cora L.V. Scott. Cora, born April 21st in 1840, in Cuba, New York, on a small farm, came to be seen as one of the most proficient mediums in history with her trance lectures. Cora's parents, David Scott and Miss Butterfield, were Universalists who took an interest in spiritualism. And at the age of 12, Cora and her family moved to Waterloo, Wisconsin, where her father was said to be working on the second colony. At this time, Cora's abilities came, and she would fall into trances and channel spirits. This resulted in her parents beginning to tour Cora locally to share her abilities and give lectures, as well as healing, where it is claimed she made miraculous cures, and some even say performed surgery. She would channel the spirit of a German physician, but her most frequent spirit was supposedly the spirit of a little Indian girl named Orina. At this time, her spirit guides apparently told Cora she was to drop out of school, which she did at the age of 12. In 1853, David, Cora's father, died, and the next year she made the move to Buffalo, New York. In Buffalo, Cora and Orina came to the attention of Professor J.J. Mapes of New York City while he was investigating spiritualism. By this time, her abilities to heal were gone, but she continued to focus on her trance lectures. Mapes had come to Cora's morning lecture where supposedly Orina asked the professor if he could speak at the afternoon lecture. Mapes replied, "Yes, if you will control your medium and let me give the subject that she shall speak upon." This is what was said to have happened that afternoon in the hall. The hall was packed. Cora took the platform, and after the choir had sung, came forward with her countenance so illuminated by the light of the Spirit that all beholders were struck with admiration. Professor Mapes spoke 2 words, "primary rocks." After the lecture, the control called upon the professor to speak upon the same subject. He came to the platform, and with tears in his eyes, he said, "I am a college-educated man, and have been all my life an investigator of scientific subjects, and associated with scientific men, but I stand here this afternoon dumb before this young girl." At the age of 16, Cora married Benjamin Franklin Hatch, a mesmerist who was 30 years Cora's senior. He was a skilled showman and tried to maximize on the revenue made from Cora to the point of borderline abuse, which ended in their divorce. The divorce of Benjamin and Cora caught the media's interest due to her growing fame. She first sued for divorce in 1858 after 2 years of marriage due to the abuse. He replied, but for some reason she did not go through with it. There were claims that Hatch would consort with a prostitute and make his wife receive her as a guest. He would also make sexual demands upon Cora that were a threat to her delicacy. Benjamin then sued for a divorce in the city of New York in 1863, accusing Cora of adultery. 2 men were actually named, these being William McKinley and James J. Mapes, the professor, which calls into question the validity of his witness account to her abilities above. However, she also petitioned for divorce in another court. Her petition was granted, then canceled as Benjamin was still being heard. Eventually, they split bitterly, and after their divorce had drawn much public attention. After this, Cora would have married 3 more times, taking her husband's surname every time, this being Daniel, Tappan, and Richmond. Cora's lectures covered topics she had little knowledge of, claiming to be under a trance. Dr. A.B. Childs says of Cora at the age of 18 years, in July 24th, 1858, saying, "The lady can address an audience of 5,000 people with great ease, and the guides through her give an elaborate discourse upon any subject the audience may choose. There cannot well be a greater test of spirit power than this." And by 1864, Cora had married Tappan, an abolitionist, Native American rights activist, and a military officer. She had moved to Washington, D.C., where by 1865 she had become a well-known figure in President Lincoln's party. It is said that many members would come to Cora on advice for the crisis of the day, often being the war. During this time, Cora had also received a letter from the White House by Ulysses S. Grant, thanking her for her benefit to the country for 6 years during difficult times. Later, with President Andrew Johnson in power, the opposition looked for her spiritual advice daily, as did President Ulysses S. Grant in his first term of office. At this same time, her marriage with Samuel Tappan was to come to an end in divorce. She then moved to England, where she reputedly gave 3,000 lectures, and here are some quotes on Cora's lectures at the time. That flow of verbiage never fails as a small matter. Miss Tappan's utterances surpass those of almost every other autumnist, in that there is a fairly coherent argument throughout. Two, at least, of the subjects sent to her in 1874, The Origin of Man and the comparative influence of science and morality on the rise and progress of nations, may be presumed to have been little familiar, but the speaker is never at a loss. Again, we find none of the literary artifices by which ordinary speakers are wont to give relief. There is no antithesis, no climax, no irony or humor in any form, and the dead level of style reflects a dead level of sentiment. There is no scorn or indignation, no recognition of human effort and pain, no sense of the mysteries of things. The style is clear, as jelly is clear. It is the protoplasm of human speech, and it is flavored throughout it with mild cosmic emotions. Frequently, at the close of an address, Miss Tappan would recite an impromptu poem, again on a subject chosen at the moment by the audience. Some of these poems were strikingly melodious, and it is interesting to note how the melody continually overpowers the sense. By Frank Podmore, Modern Spiritualist, Volume 2, 1902. On May 10th, 1874, Cora Tappan delivered an inspirational discourse at Cleveland Hall in London. The next week, Judge John W. Edmonds delivered an address to a large audience in Cleveland Hall through Miss Tappan as a medium. The judge had died less than 2 months earlier, and Charles Maurice Davies wrote about her that year, saying, "The reigning favorite at present in London is Miss Cora Tappan, who is better known as a medium in America by her maiden name of Cora Hatch. She came out with considerable eclat in St. George's Hall, after which she drifted to Wenston's Music Hall in Holborn, in which slightly incongruous locality she set up her spiritual church. Now she has abandoned the ecclesiastical title and hangs out at Cleveland Hall, somewhere down a slum by Fitzroy Square. Facilis descensus." Then Cora would return to America in 1875 when she married William Richmond. They then moved to Chicago, where William would act as Cora's publisher. Her first books as Cora Richmond were published in England, though. Here, Cora was the pastor of the first spiritual society in Chicago called Church of the Soul. The society had to relocate several times due to the increased attendance to the society and her lectures, and at this time, Cora would go from state capital to state capital giving lectures, while the Banner of Light would publish all of her lectures. One of Cora's favorite and most frequent stops was San Francisco, where at one point she stayed in the city for so long that her weekly discourses and other books began to be published there, and the attendance to her lectures here would often reach 5,000 people. During 1892, Cora officiated at the funeral of her good friend, Henrietta S. Maynard, who had been President Lincoln's personal medium, and in 1893, Cora helped co-found the National Spiritualist Association, which is now known as the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, and was made the first vice president, with Harrison Barrett, the editor of the Banner of Light, as president, and at this time, Harrison also wrote Cora's biography. Later in the year, Cora's guides prepared a paper which was the presentation of spiritualism for the world's Parliament of Religions. Superbly written in its gestalt, giving the world the finest insight of all aspects of spiritualism. This parliament was the first time representatives of the world's religions came together in one location, being Chicago. Every perceptive mind today should locate and read this document on spiritualism. As Cora was coming later in life and aging, she decided to spend most of her time, if not all, in Chicago, continuing her services at the Church of the Soul to an audience of 2,500 people until her passing on January 3rd, 1923. And with today's video, I shall end on a quote from Cora herself. "The coming religion is a religion in which the temple reared to God will be in human form instead of being built of brick or stone, a religion of work rather than worship, and in place of the deathly creeds with all their hungry parasites of prey, a religion of life, life actual, life here, life now, as well as the promise of life everlasting." I apologize for the shorter video this week, but if you would like me to continue speaking on Cora's lectures and what they consisted of and were about, just comment below and I'll see what I can do. Thank you for watching today's video, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what topic you would like me to do next, and it may be my next video.